Today I'm going to show you how to convert a cheap trap into an effective trap. It's still cheap, but it doesn't cost $1,000. A few simple modifications will make it happen. Let's take a look. So here are a couple of cheap traps. Obviously one is older than the other, and the one closest to us I've converted to make much more effective and better than the older one that I've retired in the back. So on this nearest trap, I've moved the trip plate back about a foot. And I've done that by purchasing 3/8" rod. They come in usually 6-foot lengths. And cutting it to replace the existing rod because it'll need a little length to get back to the trip plate. The trip plate is actually quite easy to remove, as you'll discover if you look underneath one of these what I call cheap traps, and modify it by making a couple of 90-degree turns on either side. There's 2 rods, one on each side, of course, and then connecting it to the release mechanism that is on top of the trap. So this is done easily, maybe takes a half hour total, and the cost is $10 maybe for the 3/8 rod. Now, as compared to the other trap that hasn't been modified, you can see where the trip plate is set back quite a bit. And of course the rod is quite a bit shorter, so you need to take good measurements. Another modification involves removing the bait box that comes with the cheap trap, basically throwing this thing away because it'll never be needed or used, and cutting away at the interior that holds that bait box in place. So this leaves much more room for a dog to come after the bait. I purposely left a larger space, probably larger than I would prefer, to put a large dish that I use, an amp-proof dish, to put the bait in. So this trip plate, in other words, could be moved back further if you chose to do so based on your preferences about what kind of plate or dish you use to put bait. But this gives ample room for the dog to move back as compared to this thing, which does not allow for the dog to move back very far. So now we'll look at the entry to the trap. First, the unmodified trap. So of course the door comes open, and it's set by using this simple little latch mechanism. And when the dog enters and stands on that plate, it'll release the latch and the door will fall. And you see it bounces at least twice, sometimes 3 times. And since the trap is pretty small, it'll give the dog ample opportunity to bounce out of that trap. If you're lucky, they won't. But to correct and make sure that the dog doesn't exit the trap that way, in my modified trap, I installed 2 simple gate latches, one on either side of the interior of the door. And I did that by using, again, 3/8 rod, about 1 inch off the bottom of the trap, maybe 2 inches, using some simple 1/4 inch bolts. And in doing so, same applies with regard to the simple latch. The dog goes in and trips the plate, but this time when the door falls, it locks solid first time. And additionally, I've had a dog break out of one of these traps. Very strong dog, by the way, but nonetheless, in addition to the door latching solidly the very first time with no bounce, it also provides additional security so the dog can't break out of the trap. So the last thing to be addressed is the release mechanism for the door. It's kind of a hokey setup. As you can see, it's got that little horizontal piece that catches underneath the door. When the dog steps on the trip plate, it pulls that piece out from under the door, and the door should trip. The issue with this mechanism is Sometimes it gets a little rough with use, maybe even rusty. So this needs to be cleaned and sanded every time before this trap is deployed. Something that I have not done yet, but I will give it a try in the future, is this trip plate only has so much movement because of the design of the trap here. If we were to cut out this section, this would give much further movement of the trip plate. It would stand taller off the deck. So that's another option to improve the trap. So that's it. As you can see, with a few simple low-cost modifications, you can convert a cheap trap, just like this one, into a much more effective and safe trap at a very low cost. Oftentimes, people don't have $1,000 or the 6 to 8 weeks wait time to get a better trap delivered to them. So this is one way or one alternative or solution to trap a dog.